it anyway.
Like T.D. Lane, the secretary bird.
You are live.
Oh, we're live. All right.
Well, we are live. Boy, thank you, Peter. This has been kind of a clunky ad hoc bit, but thank you very much at any rate, and we will do it the best we can in the wacky world of Zoom, etc., and StreamYard and Crapperoni and all of that.
I'm used to juggling
main-
work between Mel and me, so this will work out just fine.
Yeah, we got a couple topics, of course. There will be a continuing discussion of our replacing Darwin. I'll kind of put that on the second burner there because of something that came up more recently. And then after that, we'll be dealing with intelligent design and the order in the genome crap. But I can't resist because this just came today, the latest edition of Acts and Facts, which we will be wanting to incorporate a lot of that in Volume 2. The Carved in Stone, the new flood model by Tim Clary, which has no sources at all. So I'm not entirely sure what his new drink.
It has no sources.
Then we've got
color me surprised.
Yeah, well, it's just got a lot of text and no real details, so I'm not entirely sure where the argument is. Then we've got compelling evidence for an upper Cenozoic flood boundary. That's also by Tim Clary, where he keeps on insisting the same thing over and over again. And then our old golden oldie, Mount St. Helens Living Laboratory for 40 years, bum, 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 by Clary and Sherwin, getting a pattern of contributors here. And then we got, this one I really love, The Subtle Idolatry in Modern Science, and a picture of a sauropod. Apparently, the idea that you've got, or they're talking about sauropod structure without acknowledging God is apparently a form of idolatry.
Of course.
Yeah. Mark Hallett and Matthew Weddell authored the academic book, The Sauropod Dinosaurs, and so forth. So they're, and we got, Delighting in God's Handiwork in the Classroom. That one has nothing going on. Oh, and this one really is going to shock you. Tompkins says again that human chromosome 2 never happened, the fusion. Isn't that exciting?
Oh.
Yeah, he's going to keep
Man,
at that.
they
so
really
we'll
convinced
so that
me.
all of that, almost all of this issue. Oh, and how do hominids fit with the Bible? There's another one that's right up our thing. That's by Brian Thomas. And then Disconcerting Duck-billed Dinosaur DNA by James Jeanson. So virtually everything in this current issue is going to be stuff that we're going to be putting in Volume 2.
Why does RJ sound like he's talking?
Little tome, little tiny thing that I think it'll probably end up being as bulky in terms of content as the previous one as we put all the material in. But now on to the main act, which is the Replacing Darwin. As I noticed earlier in the previous episode that there was a certain tendency of Jeanson to be vague and not particularly detailed on things. Well, he goes over the top this time. He has a thing where he's talking about across the animal kingdom, chromosome diversity suggested that Sutton's discoveries were applicable to virtually all multicellular life, which is a nice thing. Sutton was working out the idea that with sexually reproducing organisms, you had lots and lots of possibilities for combination, the more chromosomes there were and so forth and so on, which is perfectly fine detail. The problem was what he put in for his note number 9.
Oh, no.
I put the link up to it. It's a thing, a material from UNESCO, which is, you would think that it would be something about Sutton or chromosome diversity or multicellular life or something related to any of that. It turned out to be a listing of the R&D researchers in science and technology fields by nation. Nothing whatsoever to do with biology.
Are you serious?
Nothing whatsoever to do with multicellular life. It was a 100% irrelevant citation. And so
Not even just 100%
I'm suspecting
irrelevant,
that
just, it's a red freaking herring.
Why on earth?
Yeah. I mean,
RJ, how did he cite it? Was it a link? Or?
I encountered. Oh, just the link. Yes.
Okay.
And so I had to manually type the text in to get the link up because, of course, my mouse clicking on a book page just doesn't seem to work. I put the
hard.
little laser thing over on it. It just doesn't do that.
Right.
Yeah. So I had to manually type it in. And when I actually linked to the thing, it was a perfectly functional link, except nothing to do with what the topic was. And so that's a dead giveaway. My suspicion is this book is chock-a-block with technical links just exactly like that. And I'm going to have to be looking up every effing one of them, because we cannot assume that anything is valid.
Well, it's weird.
Go ahead, Jackson.
It's weird that he would put, as someone who writes technical stuff, it makes no sense for him to cite links instead of at least put the name of the paper in with the link. I mean, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
Because links change.
Yeah, and there's not even any consistency to how he does that. Rupi and Sanford were inconsistent on their source citations as well, where sometimes they would cite an article by its web version as it was published in the magazine, and then they would cite exactly the same article as a web link to the internet version of the article, even though they'd already cited it under the other version. So there's a certain sloppiness that I think was that they were scavenging material and whatever they happened to come up with, that became the citation. But this bit here, I'm suspecting that Jeanson doesn't want you to find his data all that easily. So, you think?
It's possible.
Hey.
So we're going to have a lot of fun as we get into the... Yeah. Ask
at least it's
Tornado or T.
At least it's better than what I ended up going through when I watched one of Aaron Ra's videos. It was literally called "The Evident Shape of the Earth," and I only had to watch the first 90 seconds to get the entire gist of the video. Basically, Aaron Ra had asked...
Oh, that the Earth is...
Well, no, it's worse than that. Aaron Ra asked, what would convince the person, the flat earther, that the Earth was actually a spheroid? And he says, there isn't anything that can convince me.
Whoop. The mask falls away.
Oh, well, that's being honest.
Oh, it gets even worse.
That's being honest.
Aaron Ra asked, but if I could prove it, would you reconsider? He says, and basically the person, Gensho, says, you cannot prove it. Basically, his entire Gensho's entire argument could be summed up in 9 words. If science disagrees with me, then science is lying.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that critics of creation science are most adamant about. This doesn't technically apply to intelligent design because intelligent design professes to be evidence-based, even though they aren't really. But Answers in Genesis and Institute for Creation Research are upfront that anything that conflicts with their interpretation of the Bible must be wrong. There has got to be something flawed with it in principle. So they at least have a certain wacky honesty about it, that it's insane and counterproductive and wrong, but at least it's consistent.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was just gobsmacked by the tendentiousness of that because remember, I study an awful lot of different creationism, and so I'll give you kind of a summary of the pecking order structure of things. That virtually all authority quotes that are given by anti-evolutionists are pretty much accurate text strings. That the number of examples of where people have things where they're actually putting in the wrong text as the quote, those are relatively rare. You know, and I, when we did the Rocks were there, we were quoting an awful lot of ones and they would quote other people. The quotes were always textually correct. I don't think we found a single example of where they were substituting a word or rearranging stuff in that. Although I think maybe some of Bugs down the road, he was a little bit loose on some of his quotes, but Purdom and all the rest, they were correct in the authority quote. Then you move down to the ones where the quote doesn't actually exist. We allude to a few examples of that, where like Kent Hovind's non-existent quote, Keith quote that made the round, but it wasn't an original wrong claim from him. He was just copying somebody else. And so this is really typical behavior for creationists to offer a completely irrelevant citation.
Kent doesn't make many original wrong claims, does he?
He doesn't make any.
I'll
he's
be
not
a
a fact
little more
claimant.
blunt. He never makes an original claim. I don't know of any original thought that guy has ever had. He is a 100% bottom feeder parasite.
Oh, I know one, RJ. Calling
Uh,
you the ultra boy of atheism.
That was Kent Hovind.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
That's an accusation rather than
Although,
Yeah,
wait,
yeah.
actually,
but
it was
that
an original
we do
thought.
know-
free a blow
we do know
eating-
one. Ken Ham did decide, I'm gonna
What?
take all the money for myself. So that's an original thought. So
Oh well, that's an example of applied ethics rather than actual fact claims. So it's an entirely different dynamic on there. But yeah, so you have the serious fact claimants. They still suffer from cranial blockage of the rectum. Your Arthur Snellings and Peter Snellings and that type up there, the techno geek footnote sorts, Woodmarap and all the rest. Then you have the lower echelon apologetics people, the Mike Riddles and that basically furrow and regurgitate the dogmas. Then below that, you have the secondary source addict, the opioid addicts, like Kent Hovind, who then scavenge around and they copy the material, and they're usually slavishly detailed about it so that's how you can often track down where they get it from. Then below them are the Nephilim free levels of ones that still copy parasitically from the creationists, but they don't want to tell you where they get their stuff from. Then way down below, you encounter the true bottom feeders that just basically wing it. I think Paul Dupuisson falls into a bit of that category. These are the ones that kind of invent their own creationism on the fly. They're relatively rare, by the way, in the field. So
I would say
you can
Neff
kind of
is
gradate
kinda
it
like
on that
that.
scale.
Yeah, Neffy kind of sucks.
I've learned firsthand how
I
much
haven't
Nephilim
seen
free
him
sucks.
winging. I haven't
Lunar-
encountered him winging an argument so far.
Lunar Bukaki. He
Oh, the
winged that
lunar
one.
bukkake?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's
that
his.
actually, the idea that the water spurts would be producing craters on the moon. That one I haven't seen anywhere else. So that one may be an original
I've got a couple
form.
questions
got me
about
there.
that. First of all,
Just a couple?
yeah. First of all, if water is traveling at such a speed that it can crash into the moon, how come the craters aren't a lot bigger? Because the impact energies resulting from giant chunks of water traveling at near luminal speed would be enough to generate.
And where exactly did the water go?
It evaporated.
Where exactly did the water go?
Yeah, and second question, how does the water was
ironically, we still have
atmosphere at
tiny
that rate of
amounts of
speed?
water ice on the moon. We still actually have some water ice on the moon in some of those craters that are in perpetual shadow because it's like effing cold. So they don't really go anywhere. But yeah, we'll put that down in that. So anybody that wants to analyze any creationist or any non-creation, anybody, you can theoretically categorize them based upon what kind of source level they're doing. Are they offer source material for their assertion or not? If they do, are they coming up with it on their own? Then they're a fact claimant. If they're copying somebody else, they're a secondary parasite by whatever realm. Yeah, and it's
RJ.
a useful tool to systematize. So whenever I bump into people,
When I asked Nephilim Free if he had a citation for most of the geologic column being fine boundaries between rock and such, he gave me a Wikipedia link. When I specified that I want geologists, not Wikipedia, he got a bit pissy and said that he doesn't do debates in text. So yeah.
Do you know why? Because he probably doesn't know how to
that's when you get into
spell.
the rage quit mode. Everybody that I've heard of that's interacted with Neff on a discussion of data level has at one point or another acknowledged that trying to pin him down on his sources is like nailing Jello to a wall. That it's just
like herding cats.
He constantly runs from it.
You can.
And so in my debate with him, and for all of you who haven't seen my debate with Neff, do take a look at that.
Watch that.
It
Then go
was
watch the after
particularly
show.
fun because it was a barrage of what I expected him to deal with. Yeah, it was quite amusing, and thanks to Colton, he was able to track down, he alluded to a source that discussed a lot of the criticism of Whitmore, where it became clear that's where Neffy got his picture of the Coconino Canyon from. Because there's a very unique, somebody standing right in front of a thing. That was from Whitmore's lectures that he's been putting around. So,
yeah, when
Isn't
Neffy
Neffy also a flat earther?
He's a geocentrist, not a flat earther.
Oh yeah,
no,
it's
geocentrist.
stupid.
When Neffy and Colton were doing their debate the other night, one of the things that Neffy just dropped out there was dinosaurs had been killed in the middle of fighting, so clearly there was a catastrophic burial. Yes, by a sand dune. The Protoceratops and Velociraptor were buried by a sand dune.
The point is,
not a flood.
Yeah, and that was the fun part between that I was enjoying my debate with Neff, because not only Neff, but also a lot of the people in the live chat were bringing up topics that didn't surprise me, that I was already aware of. And so I was able to hopefully do a pretty good job of
I'd argue a different route of a catastrophic burial. If I were to do a catastrophic burial, it'd be a catastrophic burial by, well, let's just say iridium-filled rock. Right between the shoulder blades.
Yeah, that would be one. Oh, by the way, I do have to absolutely give praise to Jackson again on that wonderful new video that he did on the Precambrian stuff. I had read because you send me always the scripts for me to look through on that, and I've checked through most of the sources I have, but others that I didn't. But as usual, it's your use of pictures that's magnificent. I love your because you put up that bloody map of the Precambrian world. Yeah.
Yesterday on Dapper's channel, there's somebody in the chat saying, "Oh, there's no ancestors for the Cambrian organisms. Got ya, evolutionist." And I just posted, "Oh yeah, there's Ediacaran biota." Jackson's video.
They're behind.
And then that person immediately moved over to, "There's nothing for the Ediacaran biota. Eat shit, evolutionists." It was just great.
Well, that's a trope.
Yeah, you got to move the goalpost. Yeah.
Because Stephen Meyer, when he wrote or when he published Darwin's Doubt in 2013, was channeling Stephen Jay Gould from 1987, when there were very few Ediacarans known, and so Meyer was already way behind the curve by 2013, and it looks like a straight line to him at this point.
And it's gotten worse since. Yeah.
Isn't it funny how
the field, and particularly in the embryology development, the stuff on the Urbilateria and that you had in there, the visualizations were really neat. But what gobsmacked me was that map from the Hoffman article from 2017 that showed the continental distribution in the part of the Ediacaran period, and then a little bit later on. And what amazed me about it, first of all, it just stands out like a sore thumb. I hadn't noticed that. I had looked at the article originally because I hadn't gone through the whole bit, and the chart was a couple of pages down into it. That you could clearly see that there was a gigantic rift going on as the Rodinia supercontinent was starting to break up. And the thing that I was particularly impressed with was where India was. that India was stuck in the early stages way up in the northern hemisphere. And then later on in the Precambrian, it's moving south, so it's almost by the equator. And I knew already that eventually it gets all the way to the south, and it's slamming into the polar continents during the Silurian. And then later, like a banana being squeezed out of a peel, it's being shunted out towards that hot spot in New Zealand about 90 million years ago, where it ricochets off of that, producing a bunch of stuff on its volcanic eruptions on its eastern side. It's now heading northward across the Seychelles Islands Reunion hotspot, where the Deccan traps come in 65 million years ago, and then starts heading in towards as the whales are developing in the Tethya Sea that's shrinking, eventually slams in and pushes all that land up and forms the Himalayas. And so I have to say, India is the hands down wandering child of the geological system. It's absolutely spectacular.
India
and
just
all from
kind
of when I was putting all the dots together from that.
India's the friend that's traveling all over the world.
It stayed together as a fairly stable subcontinent blip for half a billion years. It's amazing.
Yeah, one of
It
those
just moves around where it is.
those what cratons or whatever they are, just the little kind of core pieces that
Yeah.
sort of move around. Yeah. Well, because India had the
Yeah. Oh,
the
and by the way,
developing
that
rhinos
we'll
on it.
have a point. Yeah, well, yeah, it's fascinating to see the paleogeography of it, and it also explains why eventually in almost every area of paleontology at some point or another, you're going to discover, oh, there's a lot of interesting stuff from India, things from all these little obscure Indian journals, because the fact that that's actually relating to all of that. Another one that we'll be putting into the new book will be the cold slab example that Neff brought up. That I recognized that was another one of Clary's stupid arguments that was made, and I put the postings up of my video that I did on it so that anybody can link through on that. And as far as I can tell, Neff has not put up anything from his end yet, and I don't suspect he will. If anybody has heard of Neff actually putting some documentation up for that cold slab argument to say where he's getting this from, and is it from somebody other than Clary's ICR article, let me know.
Well, actually, I have a fairly good
that'll be
idea of
quite a
where Nephew's
surprise.
getting most of his ideas from. The artist's name, or I should say, the artist's name is Yor, and the source citation is ass.
No, he's
my
sneaking
God.
it up. I'm absolutely sure he got it from Clary. Clary's article in X and Facts, because that was the one who put it up, and so he's just copying it. I see hi Vesta and Korag
Oh,
and
God.
Lavender Lady in the live chat there. We
Diana.
made it. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead a little early because our times is all screwball because we started a little bit late, and thank everybody on the patron front, and particularly, okay, there we go. I'll also put a heads up on the fact that there are people that are sticking with me in this COVID time. I mean, I recognize how budgets can be panicked and everyone's worried about making what it is. So the fact that people have been sticking with me, and a few have even jacked up the thing a bit, has been just wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So on our colleagues level, we got Hendril and Eric Rowley and Benjamin Simpson and Speed of Sound and Cirrus and Zeshi, and our researchers, Adams, Ian Chen. You little bastard, you're just buying books for Dapper Dino and helping all around, and you raised your thing up to research level here, and so thank you, good gravy. And Convert Me and Eat Meal and James Fitzwater and History Minor and Ralph McFadden and Polo Gia, and our assistant researchers Mike Apple and Duranko and Totas Real, and our friends Daniel and Steve Bauman and Marigale Beddoes and are cool, and Devin and Morton and Paul the Skeptic and Puffalophagus and Bo and Alex and Paul. And I will continue to thank the legacy patrons who helped at one time or another, Jen and Jody and John and Keith and Andrew and Yui and Mona and Brad and Daniel and Yanya and Staggles and Son and Ugly German Truths and Everett and Sewer. Every single one of you, it's a delight to be honored by the project, because you think it's not crap and it's worth to do even in a time of that. So anyway, that thank yous out of the way, and then on to the other matters. As you know, I am no great fan of the Discovery Institute and Evolution News, and they are a cornerstone of that intelligent design movement. And things they came up with a little ways back on the 27th of March was more hints of order in the genome, on a variety of really large number of technical papers that they put links up to, of which the vast majority of them are public access. So I put the links up to all of those. Ooh. And it's what Jackson and I call the Gee Whiz phenomenon, which is, oh, isn't it complicated? Oh, isn't it intricate? It must be designed because it's like doing something. And the presumption that this therefore means design. Some of it was already under my scope because it related to what I would call origins issues, which is error correction, protein translation, any of these things that are the nuts and bolts mechanics of how stuff is put together, cells are regulated, genes are regulated. That stuff is origins as far as I'm concerned. And even though some of it only comes in with eukaryotes, it's still of interest to me as an origins problem. The other problem, of course, is if you have a biological system that's doing stuff, what happens if what it's doing connects up to diseases? And as it happens, a few of the examples, as usual, are ones that directly relate to disease issues. This, let me see, the Bullock paper, I think, is the main one. That was from PNAS. Let me get my little thing up here. There we go. Yeah. Which is DNA polymerase proofreads errors made by DNA polymerase. It's an open thing. I think you can get the whole bloody paper. Fine and dandy. Because it proofreads errors. Ooh, design. Tiny problem. If they had bothered to read farther down the road, redundancy and replication fidelity mechanisms has implications for human cancer biology. Mutations in the pol gene, which encodes the catalytic subunit of pol in humans, are found in 5 to 8% of sporadic colorectal and endometrial cancers, and defined a unique subset of these cancers with a so-called ultra-mutated phenotype. In other words, this thing is prone to do that sort of stuff. Now, if they want to argue that the designer really likes those varieties of cancers and designed the system to do that, or it would be like the airbag manufacturers saying, well, of course our airbags blow up occasionally. That's not to be something you should sue us about.
Well,
No.
it's kind of
So
it's kind of
the whole
ironic
time-
anyway. I mean, it's kind of ironic because variation has to happen in nature for things to adapt. So it's like you purposefully designed a faulty machine. I don't know.
Exactly. And that's the downside of the theodicy thing. Michael Behe is prone, if you push him against the corner, to say, well, we don't demand that everything be perfect. You don't necessarily give the most expensive toy to your child. That was an analogy he used in Darwin's Black Box. But no, this is not like giving your kid a more rudimentary toy. It's giving them a toy with sharp edges on it that can slice their fingers off. This suggests
giving them a hand grenade.
An inattentiveness. Yeah, exactly. Yes, give them the hand grenades. Well, I told them how the pin worked, so don't blame me. You know, that this is just appalling. And the problem is that design arguments that try to do this gee whiz approach, where things relate to things that can produce diseases, the problem with a cancer is that it's a really successful cell. From the cell's point of view, this is a really successful piece of biology. It's replicating and it's doing it really good, and it just won't stop. And so the idea that some of these things can be the unintended foam on the beer of biological processes where you have a yin and yang of positives and negatives. Natural world doesn't have a problem with that. Evolutionary world doesn't have a problem with it. But the theodicy world of religion, where only the good stuff is designed and all the bad stuff is something that they're not going to think about. Or maybe it's, at least the young earth creationists have kind of like an instantaneous get out of theodicy free card where they say it's just the fall.
Well, that's
just lame.
Well, see, that's what I was thinking about the other day, or that's what I was tweeting about the other day. With, it's really interesting to think of theodicy issues that can't be solved either by the flood or the fall. For instance, if you want to ask, why is there a retroviral gene that is needed for us to make the placenta? Why is that there? Because it also makes...
Yeah, why go that route?
Because the neat thing is the was the ERV-W. It also makes retroviral-like elements while it's being used by the mammal to make the placenta wall, but it's also making little viral particles. So, you know.
Yeah, down. It's like the Oompa Loompas are making the chocolate and also crack over in the corner. You know,
Right.
you got more going on with that in this. We mentioned in The Rocks Were There, a shameless plug for fabulous book, the cholera example, where that fellow tried to just argue up the yin yang that there's a really good reason why cholera is out there. that supposedly it was there to dissolve the waste products and shells of ocean organisms. And you go, you had to do that so that other people could get cholera? Was that really a necessity?
Wait.
I don't know. There's
You had to
something weird
dissolve
going on
ocean
in here.
shells so other people could get cholera?
Well, no, the cholera organism supposedly was designed just to do the shell dissolving, and that somehow or other, then the fact that it also causes cholera, but of course it actually causes diseases in fish too. So that when you actually looked at the data, no, it's a tendentiously stupid argument, and by now you should realize that there's an awful lot of tendentiously stupid arguments in creationism.
I might have to be because I'm actually struggling to stay awake.
Oh dear.
Well, remember,
Yeah, well,
all
Vesta says
messed up.
that
So I might.
Vesta says Neff has the voice that, to me at least, is like a fingernails on a blackboard, and his attitude is so condescending. I will agree. I don't find his voice annoying, but I do say that he is incredibly condescending. He just drips self-confidence.
Yeah.
I'm an annoying jerk. I know that.
He wouldn't be quite as bad if he spoke a little bit faster. He can be. The annoying part comes from him being a bit of
and
lethargic with his speaking.
Structurally, the thing that bothers me most about Neff. Structurally, the thing that bothers me most about Neff is his tendency to repeat a question when you haven't answered it in the way he wants you to. So you give an answer, and he just hammers away and hammers away and hammers away, which he did in my debate and the previous times I've dealt with him. And it can get rather tendentious after a while, especially when he doesn't do the reverse, where if you ask him for his source base on material, boop, he won't oblige. So he does not play by his own standards. If he wants to be so smug about question answering, well, then he can answer some bloody questions once in a while. So that's the way that. Okay, we'll find out what happens.
I think I'm gonna head off because I actually have had a little bit of trouble staying awake. It's like I've almost.
Yeah. I think there's an awful lot of people that need to rest up.
Yeah.
I'm amazed that
I'm gonna head out.
was in the wee hours of the morning.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. Good night, Tornado.
Yeah.
Bye, Tornado.
Don't accept any wooden tornadoes. Another thing that I find,
we actually had tornadoes today.
Yeah, they've been. There's been some really. It was just raining pleasantly here today, but other country regions have much more trouble on things. And a lot down there in the south, we're getting more and more tornado outside of tornado season now. Thank you, global warming. Anyway, the thing I find with the utility of particularly the live chats that go on in the debates between not just me and creationists, but anybody and creationists, is to see the cliques that form. Naturally, the pro-evolution people are clustering in agreement with the evolution side, and the anti-evolutionists cluster in agreement with the anti-evolution side. That's duh. But it's fun to watch the dynamics about which ones are offering evidence and not, and which ones are evading questions, and how uber confident that the creationists are that, oh, gosh, they just flattened that RJ guy. He just had no arguments whatsoever on it. And I'm just kind of going, yeah, this doesn't surprise me that you think that.
Well, I loved in the video that Ration did, where he deconstructs the different charts that Raw Matt showed and that Raw Matt 100% misunderstood. And the great thing about
the end value.
The great thing about the comments he was showing was they say, "Oh, Raw destroyed the evolutionists," because they just don't know anything.
Yeah, this and it's a useful diagnostic. Everything, the whole point about source methods is that everything is an object of source methods. That when you give a statement, you're either supplying information for it or not. You got it from somewhere, or as a tornado said, up the ass in some cases. We know there's been inventions of that. Ariel Roth's coral growth rate was just invented out of thin air. And the people that the social networks that form around that, those are all matters that you can investigate. And I just am wanting to spur on more and more people to catch the source methods bug, because one, you learn crap from it. Two, it's really fun. That there's probably no exhilaration that any hunter has shooting some poor little Bambi compared to what happens when you track down a primary source and find that your creationist has completely misrepresented it.
Oh my
that,
God.
that you go, aha!
It was just so funny because they watched the video live, right? Like later, either that day or the next day, Matt and his gang watched the video live. And so they heard Ration talk about N is the sample size, not the number of differences. And he still said, then what does N stand for? How do you do that?
And what this is actually doing, this is opening the head, and you see the little moths fly out, that this is an indication of what's going on inside their head, that they don't want to really understand what the chart means. They want it to mean the thing they want it to mean. And so the actual content of the chart, the numbers, what the vertices mean and all of that are utterly irrelevant. It's an apologetic argument, and I imagine their little endorphins are vibrating, and their little anterior cingulate cortex, where we humans use for self-deception, is just humming away, and they feel very, very happy with it. But the one thing they're not doing is science. And where this ceases to be a trivial matter, just today I was following up, and yesterday, on this matter of the chronology. Here we're going to get politics alert. Politics alert. We're about to discuss a bit about Donald Trump and the COVID virus. There was a really delicious analysis that was put up of the chronology of the Trump administration's response to COVID that was put up, I think originally at Raw Story, and I've been linking it around to people. Well, my favorite nincompoop, Ann Coulter, who I follow, put a link up to a Fox News chronology that had just been put up yesterday. And it's much shorter. And so I printed that out, and I went through and looked at how what was being left out. And in every single instance, all of the stupid statements that Trump had made were left out of it. They, at one point, it was a lot of puff piecery. The one that I thought was most hilarious, when the guy preened that President Trump visited the National Institutes of Health, and it wasn't the word imbued, but invigorated them. He invigorated them. And I asked, and how exactly did he determine how much invigoration was done at that meeting?
I mean, yeah, he
at
had,
the NIA.
because he called the he said people worried about it. It was just hysteria. The media coverage was a hoax meant to undermine his re-election. It's only as bad as the flu. Yeah, no, that idiot said all sorts of absolutely wrong things and has gotten people killed as a result. So,
and what was so disconcerting for me when I was reading through the long, accurate chronology of it was, I was reading it at a point when there were already 42,000 American dead. And so I'm going back and realizing that only a few months ago, you had this thing where this says, oh, in April, it's all going to be going away. That's how it happens and all that. And I'm just seeing the tombstones sticking up mentally in your head that this is deadly serious stuff. Bad method kills you if it's applied by an idiot to public policy that relates to actual matters in health. So I've mentioned, we have a governor here, Washington State, Inslee, who's actually following the science. Most of the governors are doing that, independent of whether they're Republicans or Democrats.
Oh,
and so I can tell you. Oh,
did you hear the most recent thing that Trump said, where he said hundreds of governors have come to him?
Oh,
Hundreds.
yeah, and that's another one. That's another one where you go, yeah, and what have they said?
Who are the hundreds? Are they governors from other countries?
Yes,
can,
we
I
have
can,
we have
I can
we have
explain
we have
that.
100 governors for our 50 states. Yes.
Please do, Peter, because I don't understand.
I can explain that. I mean, you all have heard that Trump is the second coming of Jesus. When Jesus was resurrected, hundreds were resurrected in Jerusalem and walked the streets,
yeah.
and that's what
All
happened here.
governors,
I mean,
yes,
we got
Governor
all
Calvin
the
Coolidge of Massachusetts is there as well.
all the governors were resurrected and going to Trump.
That could account for it. There we go. Yes, indeed. I'd like to see William McKinley, who was governor of Ohio. We have, yes, there's quite a few. Grover Cleveland, governor of New York. It'd be wonderful to talk to Grover again. Yes, and of course, both Teddy and Franklin Roosevelt, who were governors of New York. So we can go on that. Yeah, that would account for it. Or just as a suggestion, the possibility that Donald Trump is a pathological liar and exaggerator, just as a working hypothesis as an alternative.
Just think, hundreds of but Peter, I love your explanation. That is so much more whimsical than anything anyone else.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. I think that
it comes with the territory. If you have the guests on your show that I have, it just comes with the territory.
Yeah. Hey, be careful. We may find somebody actually offering that explanation.
Oh,
I wouldn't put Jaronism or somebody like that to argue there actually are. And yes, there were actually governors resurrected, and then the deep state has been squirreling them away in a special sequestered area that we can't get to in Area 53, right next door to Area 52 and 51.
It's funny that you should call it Area 53 because that's the area code where I'm at.
See? Yeah, no coincidences.
Is that the
world,
place,
Peter?
Is Area 53 the place where they keep the evidence for the global flood?
I can't talk about that. I'm obliged by contract to not talk about
secrecy.
That. Yeah.
And there are some fossilized koala bears from the flood that still have the terrified looks on their faces. They're being shot by the volcano to Australia. So we can see that too. It's all there in the evidence field. Carl Baugh has been wanting to get all that evidence for his museum, but he has not been able to get it yet. Have we milked that one for everything it's worth? I think.
Yeah, I think we lost Jackson. Jackson, refresh the page. That probably will bring you back.
Oh, hey, hello, Colton. Yes, he says I'm late. We were late too. We had some troubles getting started in there, so we didn't really start until 7:40. He asks, did I miss about the illustrious Dr. Jeanson, as Sal would call him? Oh, let me reprise what had gone on. Colton, Jeanson offered a footnote number nine, the Beatles, about this particular thing about the role that genetic chromosome variations plays in multicellular organisms. And when you look at the footnote, it is about none of that. It turned out to be a reference to a catalog at UNESCO of how many people work in the R&D field in science and technology around in various nations. Nothing to do necessarily with biology, let alone chromosomes, let alone any of that stuff. It was a 100% jump, having nothing whatsoever to do with it. So I had to put a little yellow bar across it in my spreadsheet catalog because I don't have a category for what? That because it's not it's a secondary resource, so I would be having it in the secondary column. It's not cited for an authority quote, so it doesn't fall in that thing. Since it's not a technical citation, it doesn't fall into the categories of yeah, okay, or authority quoted or misrepresented. It's a different thing. So I put a little yellow box on it to remind me of the fact that this is just head up its ass, idiotically stupid. So that raises my little antennae that all of these long masses of linkages that he puts in a lot of his references, not to citations with footnotes, normal scholarly literature, but to web addresses, I'm going to have to manually type through all those effing goddamn things to locate them to find out, do they even connect to the point he's making? because this now suggests, no, not necessarily. A lot of this stuff may be absolutely irrelevant information. So it's going to be a fun one. The whole rest of this chapter has 0 references in it. We are operating at the moment at a whopping 0.6 references per page so far. Admittedly, we are in just the early stages of the work, but nonetheless,
I
an
could
order of
count more
magnitude.
in the first chapter of rocks for there than there probably is in this entire book.
Yes. And the mere number of references, as intimidating as I want rocks to be, just on the reference base, we don't want anybody to take our word for it. The mere fact that we have thousands of references in the book is not necessarily a sign of accuracy until you look and find that we use them accurately all the time. That's where you actually get into the point. So when I don't think anyone can find any reference in my slam dunk book or in the rocks where we offer a completely irrelevant reference in the way that Jeanson just did on this one.
Oh,
I can't think of
certainly
any.
not.
Jackson, can you? Why would you even do that? You know, if you don't have a reference for it, you don't pad it. You don't put in something that looks like a reference that'll make people be impressed. Ooh, there's a thing to UNESCO on this point when it's completely irrelevant. No, that's what gave us headaches at times, where we would tackle some particular subject matter and we would start putting on our respective thinking caps, going, "Gee, what has actually been done on that topic? Wow, you know, or which creationists have said this stupid thing? You know, do we kind of want to mention how many of them there are?" And so that would lead us off to do our various research area into all sorts of little nooks and crannies. And then we would have to decide, oh, does that belong up in an info box? Because there's getting a lot of this stuff, you know. But never once have we thought, oh, here I'm making an assertion. Let's put a reference in that doesn't have a damn thing to do with it, but will give a impression that we know what we're doing. No, that's bad dog. Absolutely bad dog.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just
says,
real
I'm not
weird.
surprised. What the actual hell is wrong with that guy? Yeah, before you came on, I was pointing out that this is what Jeanson did in this is really very unusual behavior for creationists. Most creationists, we did a pecking order, that you've got your upper level Andrew Snelling class, the footnote wangers, who they're not offering irrelevant citations. They're misrepresenting and lying about the citations frequently, but they're not irrelevant to the point at issue. They, in fact, are often undermining their case when you look closely to them. Then you get the lower echelon copyists, the middle class, that slavishly repeat the claptrap that they never fact check. Then you have the independent parasites, your Kent Hovins, who are slavishly copying from the material and may or may not be too clear about how detailed they offer the references when they're copying it onto the PowerPoint. And then below that, you get the can't indicate a source to save their soul Nephilim Freeze of the world, who just vomit material they glommed onto from creationist websites and maybe a technical paper now and then, but try to pin them down on where. And way below that, the Paul Dubin level. Where would you put somebody like say, a raw?
Like, say who?
I believe he said Raw Matt.
Oh, Raw Matt?
Yeah.
I think Raw Matt's like a Nephi level. They're smorgasborders in that they'll accept anything ID, creationism, it doesn't matter. But they're not fact claimants. I doubt they come across any papers on their own. I almost bet the house. Yeah, I'd almost bet the house that everything they come across either filters through Jeanson or Sanford or someone like that. So.
Yeah, and that's why what Colton does, what Jackson does, what I do, what Apologia does, what Dapper Dino does, it's starting to be a bigger club. And Erica, there's a whole slew of them along the line that practice source methods. We're just supplying a name to it. But it's don't take people's word for it. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Jackson's word for it. Don't take anybody's word for stuff. You shouldn't have to take people's word for things. You should be able to check it out. And if there's not enough information, part of the way that we do when we're going after creationists is there's often ways you, even when they're not telling you where they're getting the material from. Colton, hats off to you, Colton. Within a matter of minutes, you were able to supply the trail of breadcrumbs that allowed us to figure out where Nephilim got his Coconino sandstone picture from. That it turned out to be from a Whitmore creationist work from the early, about 3 or 4 years ago. Creationism is various lectures that are done. Plus, all the extra information that was in those material also added things onto it. So every attempt to do source checking that way makes you a better debater. It means that you know more about the subject than you did before. It means you're more and more familiar with the terminology and all of the things that range outwards, so that collectively, more and more source methods people interconnecting and communicating with each other means our bunch is farther and farther ahead of our opponents, to where
James.
instead of trying to play the way
James?
Jump does and some of the other, who just try to debate people and they don't know enough about the subject to make a good case. No, that ain't good enough. Not in the 21st century. We have too many tools available to be able to get at the primary source information. So build the networks, use social media to connect up. Just today, before we had delays getting the show up, and then I put a link into the new paper on sauropod neck inclination that just popped up. How did I find out about that? Because I follow every single science journal? Hell no. A scientist, Holt, on Twitter, alluded to a coverage of it, which linked to the original paper. So I've got my little tendrils going out there that speed up the ability to find out about technical literature. Same way as Erica, she's going to be paying attention to stuff on human evolution at a level that neither one of us are doing, and so we can build off of that. Colton is a geologist. Everybody's got their areas of expertise that we can collectively work better even than we are as individuals, and it saves us the time. Why should everybody have to reinvent the wheel when we can spend our time finding out new stuff and rely and draw upon the material that we can fact check along the way? Believe you me, everything Jackson puts up to me, I fact check. I look up the sources and I go, shit, I didn't know that. That's neat. And
James,
the same thing with Colton and
James,
the same thing
James,
with Erica,
can I quickly interrupt?
And I'm the same with me. Yeah.
So since you're talking about fact checking and relaying stuff to people who might be know stuff, have you found where AIG got the picture of the Neanderthal wearing a T-shirt and sunglasses?
Is that the guy from Geico? Isn't that the Geico Neanderthal?
I don't know. I
think that is.
I was
really
watching, and I think I lost pretty much half of my brain watching that video. First they were saying that Lucy was transitioning to become a human, so it's a weird kind of. It's not transsexual; it's transspecial.
Is this a new Sutton video thing? One of their little shows?
Yes, it was today about human evolution.
Oh, okay. Well, I can guarantee you that a certain person who will remain nameless, Pelagia, is going to probably do something on that because he follows all of that. So, that wouldn't at all surprise me that that's going to be covered on that.
Yeah, he got tagged in on Twitter, and I really hope that he's going to do something with this because this was.
So I'm looking at it right now, and I am like 95% sure that's the Neanderthal guy from the Geico commercials.
Oh dear!
I really do think.
Don't they know the tools people have today and the fact that people have memories?
Well, so they had an entire new thing. At least to me, it was new. Apparently, the evolutionists are upgrading apes and downgrading humans to make transitional species. Have you heard that before?
Gosh, isn't that amazing? Oddly, we don't seem to have got that memo. No. Anyway, there we go. Well, to some extent, the other issue will be to what extent will some creationists try to pull the same shtick with the Australopithecines and that, as has done already in the Ark Encounter to keep things down. Why couldn't Noah actually be a Australopithecine, and then they rapidly mutate into human beings afterwards? I mean, if you can do it from a short neck okapi into a giraffe in about 100 years, then you should be able to pull off the same trick with that. Yeah, let's give them some more rope to hang themselves.
I don't know, but I was told today that there was virtually no difference between Neanderthal DNA and human DNA. It was exactly the same.
Well, that would be wrong because we now have their genome. This isn't even a question anymore.
No,
They're not humans.
A bunch
To
of
steal
them.
a
Yeah,
joke.
so many of the Neanderthals lived down into the relatively recent period, about the last 20 or 30,000 years, which means that big stretches of their DNA are directly accessible. In fact, they knew more about the damn Denisovans before they even had more than a finger in terms of the bones, because you had the bloody DNA. And there's still a little third group out there, apparently, that they're still hunting around for,
who is like
that's contributed to that.
Yeah, way down there breeding with the Melanesians or whatever. Yeah, we don't even know anything about that,
and that's
whatever
how far,
that was.
That's how far field genetics has got. You're never going to be able to catch up on this little front. But yeah, and it's not only the genetic end of it, although they'll be able to actually work their way through to see the genetic reasons for the things. But in terms of like a skull sutures, I think, and tooth eruption patterns, and there's a whole mass of developmental features that they have because they've got juvenile Neanderthals, so that you can see that developmental pattern. It's not human. It's outside that range of how we develop as a human species, because they're not humans. They're in our genus. They're our close cousins. They were close enough to be able to boink and interbreed, although we still don't know the extent to which it was like unidirectional, whether it was male to female or the other way around, because you can get zygotic isolation in that mixture. But eventually they'll probably be able to work out what was going on with the sex chromosomes as they analyzed more of it. It's only a matter of time. And can we all reasonably predict that zero of the future work in this area will have been done by Jeanson or any other creationist?
no, probably not.
I think that'd be a good bet.
Oh, that's a safe prediction. Faithful, Honest, and True will probably challenge you on that, but will never actually provide creationists that are doing that work.
Yeah.
Colton correctly says, yeah, because they weren't white, RJ. Let's be real. Yeah, you've got that problem with the that incipient racialism there. It's really fun in some future projects, or maybe even in the human evolution chapter that we will be putting into the new volume 2, we will probably want to address that evolution of the creationists from flaming Southern racists back in the 1960s down to the, we're all kumbaya view that the answer to Genesis tends to do today.
We could, we have a chapter at the very end, which is about sort of the overview. We're going to talk about like dominionism and that sort of stuff. So that'd probably be a good spot for that. About the history of creationism.
Because there is, I'd have to say then those are the two. Well, no, I'll have to put it as let's chalk up the examples of where creationism has evolved. So the first is that they've evolved to accept plate tectonics. So they allow super fast continental drift. They allow super fast speciation. So they've done the thing on that. And so then maybe also they've evolved in terms of their racial attitudes and moved away from the 1920 monkey trial type down to the modern view. And so there's a certain amount of revisionism and goalpost moving. The problem is that the creationists don't want you to see that they've been moving the goalposts. So they often tidy things up.
RJ, you need to get up to speed with the latest terms, because earlier this week I was watching a video from Steve Austin, and that's not the $6 million man or the wrestler.
Yeah,
it's the other Steve Austin who doesn't know anything. He gave an entire lecture about a tectonic sprint, where just after the flood, Pangea split up, and the plates moved at a speed of 1 meter per second to its current.
Jesus Christ! Oh my
Ooh,
God.
Well, you
I
know,
think
we do know.
So I just
Ironically, again,
pictured
shameless plug.
koalas. I just pictured koalas and kangaroos
like hanging onto a tree for dear
sitting
life
with
as
a
the
sitting with a nice
Yeah.
drink on the beach, surfing as it were through the ocean towards where Australia is
Yeah.
today. It's
well,
so if
In,
you have an
in,
well, because
in
they like
chapter
imagination,
as soon
7,
as
it's great watching those videos.
yeah.
well, it's like as soon
In
as
chapter
two
7, we've
two
got a
bodies
whole. Oh, go
collide.
ahead, Jack.
I was just thinking, like, yeah, like you're sitting on the beach, as Peter was saying, and you see the other continent off in the distance, and then like as soon as the plates hit, it's like they explode. It just basically a
Well, I have made
geologic
a joke
explosion.
back in Dinomania from the old tip work back in, it's been, yipes, 15, 16 years ago. I wrote about it. But I made the joke that all the creationist lawyers, your Philip Johnsons and Wendell Bird and all that, should get together in a class action suit and sue God on behalf of the Harappa culture, which was apparently destroyed in India when the super fast flood moved the Indian continent and slammed it into Asia, and the poor Harappans all got whiplash and dropped dead. You see, that's what
and then RJ,
Indus
somehow or another, immediately after that, Indian civilizations start popping up along the river. I can't remember, over in the Doab, I think it is. The river most cities in India
Well,
are currently settled on.
ironically, the Indus Valley culture is like the Tigris Euphrates culture, that they were prone to catastrophic flooding. And and they built out of mud brick stuff. And so that's just a dead giveaway that you're going to be washed away a lot.
So
The
so now
Harappa culture, we
now
don't
I
have as
got a
much
request for
information about them
Jackson.
because
Now I got a request
their
for
written
Jackson.
language we haven't deciphered in a way that we have the Sumerians.
Now I
Oh,
got
meanwhile,
Yeah,
China
what were you
just
gonna say,
not
Peter?
caring.
I
What were you
I
saying,
got a
Jim?
request for Jackson. I want Jackson to make a video how during the tectonic sprint Australia bumped into some island that was there already, and when that happened, a duck slammed into a beaver, and that's how we got the platypus.
They were going so fast.
Yeah, there we go. That'll work.
Or
Oh,
collab between it with
Colton in
both
the
of
live
that.
chat says that he has the Colton says he has a bit from Snelling somewhere openly saying, quote, yes, radioactive plate sprint slowed down in lockstep to coincidentally agree with each other. That makes it really, really handy. By the way, in The Rocks Were There, our cute little book, we have extensive sections in chapter 7 on genuine rapid movement of land in catastrophic landslides and all of that. And there's physical reasons for it. And you can actually get some remarkably fast speeds going, and it makes a real mess. And so the idea that you could move vastly larger pieces of real estate around in a way that would not produce a even more obvious amount of mess. I'll tell you one thing you won't produce from it is paper thin layers, as Neffy likes to talk.
The thought of like mountain-sized.
You're going to find striations and pulverized rock and all of
yeah, some stuff can be pretty scary.
This is 1 meter per second. Make sure you know where your towel is, and seatbelts are mandatory.
Yeah,
and talk about windburn.
we're talking about 3,600 meters a second. Not a second, an hour with this, or about 31.5 million kilometers. I'm tired.
That's fairly quick.
That's a little fast. Yeah, it's an even greater trick that while Australia was flying at rapid speed, it took only marsupials and monotremes with it, but didn't take any Loratherian or Afrotherian fauna with it. So,
Jackson, I have a revelation. The Whopper Sands were God's airbag for the Caribbean.
Oh my God.
To correct myself there, I meant to say 31.5 thousand kilometers a year.
RJ, Don't say that too loudly, RJ. People might take you seriously.
Oh yeah, there's no level of stupid to. I mean, after all, we've debated people
We
Compared
were
to
on a
the
live
who
chat.
truth
have a no
enemy,
limit to the
very
amount
We
of
were
tits
on
that they can get.
2 live chats in the same
Oh,
night with
no.
Nephilim Free. So there's that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's more than any human being should have to endure.
Yeah, that's 2 more.
The one that I'm most impressed with
Yeah.
is dear Erica. Erica maintains her cool so sweetly. I wish I had anything near her sanguinity of temperament, but I can get pissed off by Nephilim in a way that is not unusual for people.
Colton in the chat, but it was all soft, RJ. The folds, guys, the folds.
The fools.
It was just so
Yeah, so
bizarre. It's
anyway,
like,
well,
can you not conceptualize the layer going under and then being folded and then being eroded? Like, is that so hard to conceptualize? I don't understand.
Yes.
yeah, well, I think in Nephilim's case, if all he has ever done is merely read creationist literature and occasionally link or mention something that relates to the technical literature that the creationist has cited, everything about his argument sounds as though he is merely accepting what the statements are in the same way that Standing for Truth does. And the difference between the two is Standing for Truth has a slightly more agreeable voice to listen to and will actually mention the technical literature that they're siphoning secondarily, whereas Neff never even gets to that level.
Okay, so
So we got to
I
put
just
Nephilim below Standing for Truth in that systematic.
I want to make something clear here.
Okay, well,
If you search recumbent fold coconino, first result is answers in Genesons.
Surprise.
oh yeah, the reason why they use the words they do. It's that the same reason why they use polystrate fossil. Polystrate is not a normal geology term, but it's one that was coined by a creationist.
Oh, and look,
yeah, so all of those are ones where they then use that trope so that if you Google it, I think it's quite intentional that they use the terminology in a way so that anybody coming into it is going to be pulled into their little network, and it's going to be devilishly troublesome to find the technical literature that it relates to it because they're not using the same terminology.
Yeah, same with mega sequences. Your first search results are gonna be creationist results because it's not really used much by geology. It is like very seldom used.
oh look,
So.
I found the exact picture Nephilim Free used.
Wow.
Oh dear, it's from Whitmore.
Shocked to hear that.
At any rate.
Exactly.
Oh dear.
And so there's the bit of where that's the matter that between one person or another, people can link up together and connect up together in a way that you can locate the material that you need. And that's the whole point about the scholarly methods. When anybody is debating a creationist, don't forget to move below the data floor to, gosh, where are you getting your information from? And conversely, be willing to offer your information and your source links when challenged on it. Colton did that. I did that. Jackson did that. Everyone else. And yet our opponents it's terribly difficult to get them to put up their source material. That's a clue. So we have gone now past our delayed hour, and it's already 8:49 on there. If anybody has any wrap-ups on here, let us know. If you can glom on to our book, certainly we will not discourage you from doing that. It's a massive resource of material that we designed specifically to slam into that. Jackson. Yeah.
You mentioned the other day that your niece saw our book on a website?
Oh, at Powell's bookstore, online at least. Yeah, and I checked that. Yeah, Powell's bookstore is the Mount Olympus of bookstores. If you ever do get to Portland, Oregon, it's like, oh, wow. It started out as a big building, and it now has like 2 or 3 satellite stores around the blocks around it because there's the science section had to move out to there. It is like the Neiman Marcus of bookstores. And they actually sell stuff internationally on their website. And she bumped in just out of curiosity, and our book is available there. I'm sure they're ordering it from Amazon and so forth and so on. So, and even if you want to just go through your local bookstore, they should be able to order it anyway. So you can find it through a variety of means. We want everyone on Earth to have a copy of The Rocks Were There, or even if we can make do with say only 50 million sales, we can get by with that core group of having The Rocks Were There. And
Right.
again, I will put the picture. The links are in the video so that you can find the The Rocks Were There. Straight Science Answers to Bent Creationist Questions, Volume 1. Remember, there's going to be a Volume 2.
And I
So, thank you very much.
I still
Peter,
want to
for
copy.
hosting us. You can
James, I still want to copy, but we need to figure out because I want it signed by both authors.
Oh, well, what we could do on that is you could do a thing to GoFundMe, and then I can get a copy of it and send it to me and sign it, and then send that physically to Jackson so he can sign it and then mail it on to you. So all we would need to have would be enough funds to supply the coverage of the mailing.
Yeah, that would actually work.
Deal with that, and that's what we can do. Yeah, because we're happy to do that. You will have the rare signed by both authors copy. That will be really important in the future age. After we've started eating bugs from the death of civilization, that book will be an important matter.
RJ, you know how my grandmother sent me that 1967 creationist book?
Oh yeah,
well, my cousin bought her our book, and so she got it.
Ah!
Yeah, she got our book today.
Oh well, you will keep us posted about her reaction.
We'll see
to
if
it.
she. Okay. Should be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be intriguing to see, and frankly, I would like to see. I mean, we know stupid James Cole's reaction, but of course, he didn't bother reading it first. But I'm sure creationists will have
within 24 hours of our releasing it.
Yeah, I'm sure creationists would have counter arguments to offer. The question is, will they be relevant counter arguments to offer? Because one of the things that both Jackson and I went through carefully was to think, what could a creationist offer as a counter argument to this, and how can we get ahead of them in our own discussions so that they now would have to move beyond that and do some of their own thinking? And that'll be fun to kind of see what they deal with on it. But anybody can, if anybody checks its instances, I know that there's been a response to my Evolution Slam Dunk material on the reptile mammal transition at Creation Ministries that's Standing for Truth alerted me to. We will be alluding to that in Volume 2, and so we've got a certain amount of material on here.
Oh my God! There's more stuff on the reptile mammal.
Oh yeah, it was on that bit, ironically relating to Nephilim, because Nephilim had riffed off of that silly bit on the reptile mammal transition. In fact, I think I've even got to post it or something so I can get to it back in a hurry. It's on
wait, RJ, RJ, did you say your book? You say Evolution Slam Dunk has been referred to?
It's relating to page 244 in The Rocks Were There. I had criticized Creation Ministries on this point back just as we were finishing up the book. And in October of 2019, the guy wrote a response to me. And I didn't know that he had done that. And it was Standing for Truth actually called it to my attention when I was watching the Colton Nephilim debate. He alluded to it. And so I go, thank you. So we will be going into the nitty gritty details on that. Basically, the guy just doubles down. He's still insisting that the jaw middle ear system has no connection to the jaw structure. And that's just nonsense.
That's so wrong. It is wrong developmentally, outright.
Yeah,
so,
and genetic. Yeah. And of course, the one that I do with C. Brown and various other people on the YouTube comments that pop up, and anybody can deal with this. I just say, excuse me, but nothing that we're saying on this YouTube is going to change the science. that no scientist is going
Our-
to be looking at the YouTube commenters and going, "Oh gosh, I need to change my entire way of thinking of things
Hey,
because somebody said this
RJ,
on YouTube."
RJ, are you aware that there's a posting about your book at Panda's Thumb?
Evolution Slam Dunk, the one that Natsky did.
No, there's a posting about your 5 principles for arguing against creationism by Jonathan Kane. He references your book in this article.
Oh, that is. Oh, thank you. I got to see that. That's new. What's the date
I'll
on
send it to you. It's this is from 2017.
Oh, okay. That one slipped right by me then. Okie dokie. Yeah, that's.
I'll send it to you.
I know
on
that I've
Twitter.
seen.
I'll post it on Twitter.
Yeah,
So
I know. I bumped into stuff, and I've Kane popped up in some context, and I think I brought up the subject with the book, but the fact that he's dealing with that directly, that's a different.
RJ, you do know about this. You do know about this article, RJ, because you posted a comment.
Oh, because I put a comment in on
under it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there we go. That's what I knew. It started ringing a bell.
He wrote the article. But he wrote the article, and then you posted a comment to it. So he knew about your book. He found your book, and then you saw that. Well, that's still cool. That's awesome.
Yeah,
wow,
it's a
fantastic.
little bit. There's a network of people that are aware of what we're doing and follow us on Twitter and so forth and so on. And we're banging the drum and connecting up the things as need be. I can say objectively that the Rocks Were There had a bigger audience than Evolution Slam Dunk did, and I can measure that directly by the book royalties.
That's crazy.
So we are proceeding a little bit in there, and anybody that wants to prod PC Myers and ask him when he's going to be doing a review of the book and so forth and so on, since we know he has it, and
Ra,
apparently is so busy with everything under the sun he can't even watch television programs. So it may be like 2085 before he gets around to reading our book. I don't know. So does that cover just about everybody in there? Thank you, Peter, for putting the link to the book in there on that. Now, again, I say as much as we want the royalties, don't spend money on it unless you can afford to do it. And given the fact that everything is panic-stricken time, put your family's safety and all of that first. Dapper Dino says exactly the same thing. As much as we want everybody on the planet to have these things, pay attention to that and be safe first. Okay, so I think we're about done. We killed off another hour and some odd minutes in here. Anybody have any final comments to say about the show?
Catastrophic plate tectonics doesn't work.
Secretary Byrd speaks. We discussed that in the book. Yeah, got a big section on catastrophic plate tectonics. That's one of those areas where creationists have no unanimity whatsoever, and it's hampered by the tiny problem that it doesn't work.
Nope.
Yeah.
Well,
there we go.
So,
Peter,
I have
you can
I have
plug
I
off
have
the show.
an
Thank you
additional
very
comment.
much for hosting it.
RJ, I have an additional
Oh,
comment.
yes.
While it's purely by accident, it was a pure delight to be back on Evolution Hour again.
I'm sorry
So
I keep
always
dropping
welcome.
these things on you, Peter. I apologize.
It's what I'm here for. I'm
And I'm
it's
always
what I
happy.
do. I try
I'm
to help
always
out
happy
people.
to have you a guest on the show, and to be,
Yeah. So
that you fight the good fight on there.
It was only I think 2 weeks ago when I talked to someone and I said so we were talking about you and that you tend to be well spoken while doing these shows, and when I joined the first time, you told me to say when I wanted to say something, I should say "Shut up, James," and then you would shut up, and I would get to talk.
So true.
And I got attacked because during the show I just said "Shut up, James," and then in the side chat, everyone, how can you? How dare you?
You poor guy.
It's his show. And so I just
They should have been paying attention to the fact that I wasn't offended.
Yeah, but so another thing was that show was an evolution hour that turned into an evolution double hour. That was a show about Kent Hovind, and so we dragged that on for quite a
I can
while.
do that.
Well, everything regarding Kenthoven becomes longer.
Yeah, if you gather together all of the outraged evolutionists on the Earth who have gotten into this because they saw a damn Kent Hovind video and went ballistic, that could fill a stadium.
It is
I mean,
literally
I'm constantly
why I'm
bumping
here.
into people who got into this thing. You did, and a whole bunch of others, because of the fact that they saw a Kent Hovind video, and they're going,
Yep.
Oh, I got into
because
this
he's
nonsense
around a
because
lot.
2 years ago I saw a Apollo 54 video on Kenthoven. I'm like, oh, that guy's an idiot, and then proceeded to watch the rest of Apollo 54's videos because his videos are great. Then I bumped into Aaron Raw's debate with
Oh
Kent,
yeah,
and then I went, oh dear lord. Ooh.
I was what did
Muddler is another source.
I met a guy. I met a guy who was a nationalist, and he recommended a series of creationist videos to me, and I started debunking those, and then kind of branched out. So.
Yeah. I always get a big smile when some overconfident 20-year-old creationist, and I have bumped into them, to where they lean in and says, "Have you heard of Dr. Kent Hovind?" and I go, "Oh, fly, spider invites you in." They have no idea about the circumstances of it, and so Hovind is not a trivial
Mr.
one.
Hovind.
Yes, as opposed to Dr. Dino.
Because he has
Hovind
no
is far
doctor
more,
Dr. Dino, who
he's
can't even
drawn on
define what a
far more
dinosaur is.
regularly than you will be far more likely to encounter a creationist riffing off of Kent Hovind, frankly, than you will off of Whitmore, which is why something
Sure.
that Nephilim is doing is a much more niche-based parasitism than your typical one. Because for one thing, unlike Whitmore, who writes technical, pseudo-technical literature in creationism, Hovind's got his mug out there. He's got the videos that have been jostling around for decades. I first heard about him because my brother had a friend who was a creationist, and he had a Hovind tape. And so my brother ran off a copy of that and gave it to me, saying, "Would you look into this and see if there's anything in there?" I actually physically wrote a letter. This was in the ancient days, to Kent Hovind when he was down there in Pensacola, and the little twerp wrote back, and he called me at one point. We had a conversation, and that because he was always reaching out to convert people. And you find that the Kent Hovind style evangelical is very proactive. They are wanting to get in there down and dirty. They're not aloof like Steve Austin, who will not even deign to debate anyone without a PhD. Well, hoity-toity, poopity-boop. But Kent Hovind will dither-dather with almost anybody. He's got a toll-free phone number to call.
Guys, I have good news on Mel. She did fall asleep on the couch. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, I suspect that because she's been just working her butt off. That being a teaching and to do all of this stuff and lesson plans and that, I thought, I bet she's just dozed off, and I don't blame her at all because it's been hard work. So,
earlier,
we dragoon Peter instead.
Well, earlier today, I was talking to Mel in DM on Twitter, and I told her I wish I could do a little bit more to help. So at least she got some sleep. So I did get to help.
Yeah.
Maybe not in a planned way, but I'm really happy she got some sleep.
And that gives her time to nap, get some sleep. Everybody needs to do that. There's a lot of stress that goes on from the fact that normal human beings have a life. I have gone from a person who does my stuff from my den on camera to a person who does his stuff on my camera. So it's been a not even slightly variation in my normal scheme of things. But most other people have lives that they go out and do stuff and have interactions with people in a way that, as an old fart, I don't do that. Oh, by the way, what is the sort of social distancing operation in where you are there in Europe, Peter?
So we're pretty much on lockdown. Gatherings of more than 3 people is not allowed, and all the things that have been put into place. This week, it was announced that they will remain in place until September 1st. So they aren't expecting things to die down. Although numbers
You know it's
of
serious
new
when
infections
Germany decides to postpone the Oktoberfest.
yeah. So pretty much everything is postponed here. All sports events, all major events are all postponed. We were about to have the first Dutch Grand Prix, Formula One Grand Prix, on May 1st this year, which was kind of cool because that was my birthday, and that was the first time since several decades that it was going to come back here,
Oh,
and
I
that
don't know how my
and
poor
and that's been postponed as well. So
my
yeah,
niece's family are all pathological soccer fans over there and sports fans, the Seahawks. They've got the paraphernalia and all of that. And I bet they're in absolute horrors,
yep,
as all of the sports networks are like replaying 1990s badminton tournaments. I mean, it's just
Oh
yeah,
God, not the
absolutely
Batman.
terrible.
Batman's actually fun. Yeah, my mom and brother are
It's fun to
Seahawks
play.
fans,
I
so.
can't imagine watching it.
Oh no, it's not fun to watch. It's great to play though. Honestly, one of the few things I had fun with in physical fitness.
I lack all physical coordination, so that makes it a limit. The idea that, for example, tennis that has that big racket, and so you have a relatively
Oh,
small object that is hurling at you a fairly great trajectory, and that you have to cause your body to move so that that big spatula-shaped thing
RJ, the
interacts to
great
transfer kinetic energy on a targeted level.
RJ.
No, you've lost me at that point.
As someone who plays tennis, I can say tennis is great regardless of your age. I have seen people who are in their 80s playing tennis. I see little kids playing tennis. Anyone can play tennis, RJ. Anybody
Oh,
can
the
do it.
age is not the problem. I would not be able to hit the damn ball. I was awful
Yeah,
because
you would.
I can't anticipate the whole trajectory that it would just I would look worse at it than Donald Trump.
Ooh.
And nobody would see that.
At least it's not
He has
golf.
played tennis, by the way. That
Oh, the
yeah,
shorts
yeah.
picture.
Oh, there
Yes,
we go.
yes.
And that's another one. Quite a few of my family members are golfers, and they're good at it. I'm not. The idea that you can hit this little itty bitty ball and with a stick, I just am absolutely awful at that. So whatever skills that I have at wordplay and all the rest, my body is just this. Yeah. So
RJ, you would
I do
love
not
tennis
profess
if
any.
you played it. You would love tennis if you played it, I guarantee.
No. Anyway, I guess we're about on to that.
Next time you come to
We'll
Shreveport,
ask
we're playing
Colton.
tennis.
Said if only I had friends. Colton, get some friends.
Ha! Same.
Go to your dehydrated friend store, pick up some friends, add some water, and where you go.
I
Look,
honestly wish it were
Look,
that easy.
I might buy you the first season of Friends then. Okay.
Boo.
Yeah. Well, and Jackson, he's still working through. Jackson's working through the West Wing, so
That's the cast of the West Wing are my friends.
yeah. And Allison Janney, I would see reading the phone directory. She is one of the most talented people on earth, and absolutely a delight to watch. And everybody else in the cast was really quite impressive. Now we're going down memory lane. So anyway, we've run on yet more in our shutting down the shutting down of the shutting down here. Pull the plug, Peter, before we go on any longer.
okay, I'll pull the plug. Thanks for a great show, everyone.
Thanks,
And
Peter.
thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
It was I won't say a godsend. It was a not godsend.
Hovincent.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, bye everyone.
Praise be to Kent. Ugh.